What's going on, guys? Briar here. Today we're going to be talking about this guy. This is the Hot42 HautePad Plus G16 controller. That's a lot of words, but this is a lot of controller at a pretty low price. Now, Hot42 did send me this controller for the purposes of this review, but I'm going to tell you why I like it so much once we get it on the table.
Don't expect me to be a pushover. Round one. Fight.
All right, guys, now that we got this thing on the table, let's take a look around it. First of all, you can see that we have the directional buttons, the action buttons, and the jump button, but there's extra buttons. Why are there so many extra buttons? This doesn't look like a standard Hitbox button layout. Well, there are extra buttons. This guy up here is your up button. So in addition to this thumb button that you'd normally use to jump in a fighting game, there is an up button. These just duplicate each other's functionality. In fact, if you hit this one when the LEDs are turned on, this one changes color, but this one doesn't. It's literally just the same button. But that really increases the functionality of the controller in total, because now you can play shmups, you can play side-scrolling platformers like Mario with this. You can play a ton of different games with this besides fighting games. It really opens up the functionality of the controller, because let's say you want to play a shmup. If you want to move your ship upward, you'd have to hit the thumb button. That's going to break my brain. Maybe you're smarter than me, but I can't do that. But now this just gives you kind of like a standard WASD layout, like on a PC keyboard. It really opens up the functionality. Also, we have extra buttons over here to the left and to the right of the thumb button, as well as up here above the action buttons. Now, this button up here and this button up here are both duplicated as well. They're the R3 button currently mapped out. This one is the L3 button, so that would be like clicking sticks in on a controller, right? And those can be remapped in a game like Street Fighter 6 to be, I don't know, your focus attack or your parry, right? So instead of having to hit those by hitting two buttons or by hitting it with your pinky, now you can just map that over to R3 and have it be this guy or this guy or over here, right? So it opens up the functionality of this controller quite a bit. They do sell a version of this controller that doesn't have the extra buttons. So if you're not going to play any other games with this, if you just want like kind of standard Hitbox style layout, you can get that as well, which is kind of nice. Now, up here we have the kind of standard function buttons for a controller. Start, back, what is this one? Home, the minus button, pretty standard. Another little nice feature is they actually provide little keycaps. So you can pull these clear keycaps off of here, and they provide a black one and a red one, so you can replace that. So you don't have to look at the button label every time. They're labeled start, back, home, right below the buttons. But like, hey, I know start is the red one. I'm just gonna grab the red one, which is kind of a nice little feature, nice thoughtful touch. There's also labels for all the buttons right on the controller, and they're labeled for both Xbox and PlayStation. So this one, for instance, is both X and A, and they're all labeled like that, except for obviously the directional buttons. Nice little touch. They're not labeled for the Switch though, which is a little confusing, because you know, the Switch might be telling you to hit A, and you're over here hitting this button, and that's B on the Switch. So, you know, that's a common problem for any controller that can be used on multiple consoles. Let's talk about the buttons a little bit on the stick here. So these are kind of standard keyboard style keys, right? So something like you'd see in just a standard PC keyboard. And these keycaps are kind of stuck onto there, and they give you an extra key, and you can hot swap these. They even give you a key puller. So you can actually take those out, and if they fail, replace them. And you can even change them with, you know, things that do different things. So this is like a silver style. You could change it with like a you know, something that does clickies, or you can with something that's got a little bit of feedback to it. The ones that are included with this feel great. They're silent, and they actuate very early in their kind of key press, and they're kind of soft. You know, when you're pushing them down, it doesn't give you like a very harsh feel. So my fingers can start to get almost sore when I'm using something that's a little harder when it hits bottom. I found these to be soft, not a lot of pressure, but not so little that my finger just resting on it is going to depress it. Like, you have to push it. But it feels really good, and I think it sounds really good too. It's a satisfying sound, and I like that they're LED backlit. I like everything about them. My only question would be if like you lose one of these or one of these breaks, these keycaps, like if you can get those easily. I don't know where you would find those. Moving over to the left side of the controller, we have a little OLED screen as well as a turbo button. The turbo button is pretty nice. You just hold down the turbo button, hit the button you want to be a turbo, let it go, and now that button will be turbo. To turn it off, you just do the repeat, hold it down, hit the button, let go, and now it's not turbo anymore. Very easy to use. Looking at the sides, we have a USB-A port. This is used for add-ons. I don't know what those add-ons are. It just says that in the manual. We have a USB-C over here that plugs into a console or PC, and another USB-C over here that also plugs into a console PC. There doesn't seem to be any functional difference between those. In fact, if you plug it into this one, it works fine. If I can get it to plug in. There we go. Works fine. If you plug it into this one, it works fine. So it's actually, it's pretty nice because, you know, maybe having it on the top in your setup puts a little strain on it, or maybe there's not enough room up there. So you can just move it over here. Gives you just a little extra options to play with. Moving around to the back, we have a boot button. So you got to actually stick something in here, like a paper clip or a pin, into a small hole to get to this. And this would be used for doing firmware updates or stuff like that. We have a few rubber feet. They provide rubber feet in the box here. They provide 10 of them. I only put 4 of them on, and it seems to be pretty stable, no problem. You know, with a Hitbox, you're just pushing down on it. It's not like a arcade stick where it's going to move around when you're wrenching on the stick. These things don't tend to move around that much because you're just pushing straight down on it. We also have a little key here. So depending on what you're going to plug this into, whether it's a Switch, PS3, PC or Xbox, PS4, or you can put this into keyboard mode, you just plug it in and push a different button while you're plugging it in. So for the Switch, I'm going to hold A, I'm going to plug it in, and it's going to boot into Switch mode. And you can see up at the top here, whoops, it says Switch right up at the top there. And if I unplug it, and I think it was Y for PlayStation mode, it'll boot back up. And now it's in PlayStation 4 mode. You can see that it says PlayStation 4 up at the top there. I know it's kind of flickering a little bit on the camera. That's because of the shutter of the camera. In person, that is just solid. It's not flickering at all. It also does remember the last thing that it was plugged into, or the last mode it was put into. So if you're only ever going to use this on a PlayStation 3 or a Switch or your PC, you can just put it in that mode. It's just going to remember that. It's only when you switch devices. Speaking of plugging it into things, I did quite a bit of testing on this controller, probably about 2 days worth of testing of this controller. The good news is on the Switch, on the PC, on the PS3, on my Steam Deck, on my Mister, it worked perfectly. No problems whatsoever. It worked perfectly right out of the box. These work as L3, R3. This work as an up. Really, it was just a joy to use, and I couldn't believe that they're selling something so functional for such a cheap price, right? Now, on the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, I did run into some issues. The PlayStation 4, I was able to get it working. When I first got the controller, I plugged it in, it worked for a little bit, and then it stopped working. That's a common problem for things that aren't PlayStation certified or like official PlayStation controllers on the PlayStation 4. Now, this does say on the website and in the manual that it'll work with PlayStation 4, but when you look at the manual, there was, you know, some more steps that had to be taken. So it does mention to get it into PS4 mode that this product will be disconnected at 8 minutes after connecting to the PS4. You can avoid that 8-minute timeout by uploading the verification files, which are required for PS4 mode, and then it sends you to their website. Now, their website says, here's how you do it. Here's how you load the files onto this using our software, but we can't give you those files because those files come straight off of a real DualShock 4 controller, and that's copyrighted material by Sony, right? So they can't just like distribute that. So you kind of got to work at that yourself. And I'll be honest with you, I had a hard time finding those files. And those files, there's 3 of them. They're specific to every single controller. So if you do find one that works, if Sony figures out that, you know, this specific controller has been duplicated and is now being used for a bunch of these, they can just kind of like ban that specific serial number, and then you got to do the whole process over again. So it's a bit of trickery, and it was not super easy to get working. However, with the help of the guys who sent me this controller, I was able to get it working. It was not something I could do out of the box, so it was not easy. That being said, I then said, well, now I'm going to plug it into a PS5, knowing that if you have an officially licensed PS4 controller, it'll work on PS5 games that support PS4 games, which namely are usually fighting games like Street Fighter V, Guilty Gear, Street Fighter 6, Guilty Gear, and none of those games would see this. So they saw the controller, they would just say, this controller is not supported. And I know those work with officially licensed PS4 controllers, so it may be that I can get it to work with a PS5 if I do some more work. I don't think I'm going to put in that work because I have other PlayStation 5 controllers. But, you know, I can't answer if you're going to be able to get that to work. I was not able to get it to work. I was able to get it to work on a PS4 flawlessly. I don't know how long it's going to work on a PS4, and I don't know if you're going to be able to get it to work on a PS4. So I want to make that real clear. PS3, Switch, PC, Steam Deck, Mister, all of it worked great. And the input latency seemed really, really short. It's been tested by other people as being very low. I did not test it myself. It also feels really nice. So the controller being so small, you might think it is light. So here's a PlayStation 5 case, just to get a feel for how big this thing is. Or here's an Xbox controller. You know, it's not a very big controller, but if you think about it, it doesn't really have to be because all the buttons are just, you know, right next to each other. So it's exactly as big to me as it has to be, which is great if you want to bring this thing around because it's lightweight, it's relatively thin. You can easily throw this into a backpack or even a large pocket in a coat or something, bring it to a friend's house or to, you know, a local or whatever you're doing with this. It's very portable. The downside to me was it wasn't great for lap play because my legs are kind of like out here, and this thing was kind of like in between them. It was constantly like tipping and that kind of stuff. Easy solution to that is just get some kind of board that goes across your legs, place this on that board. On a table or on a desk, I really like how it's kind of this low profile. So something like a Hitbox where it's like it's lifted up further because it's got all the wiring and the big long buttons underneath the top. I run the risk of having my hands or my wrists kind of bent at a weird position, which can cause pain because I end up resting my forearms on the table and then my hands are going up like this and then bent down to hit the buttons, and then my hands will rest on it. With this being so close to the table, I was able to use just like a PC wrist rest here, rest my palms on that, and then my fingers were pointed down at it. So it was actually really comfortable to use, more comfortable than like a high, you know, big style box of a Hitbox. But really, I like this quite a bit because of how portable it is. It's also very easy to store. You can throw it in a drawer. It doesn't have to be like this huge thing that now needs like space, right? This will easily fit someplace small in a drawer. I like that quite a bit. If you plug this thing in, you also have quite a bit of functionality. So what we're going to do here is just go through some of the functions. If you hit the start and the back button here, and then let's see, I got to get the instructions for this actually. If we hit back and start and then X, it'll cycle between different animations. So you can have it do like kind of like a rainbow effect like it's doing now, where it just cycles through. You can have it do like a solid color. I don't functionally know what all of these do. This one's kind of neat because it does like different colors. And then if you're in an animation you like, but you'd like to kind of test out like some different variants, you can also hit this button and it just kind of will cycle through like some different styles, which is kind of nice. And then we'll do that again. And I think this will actually speed it up and slow it down if you do it this one. Yeah, you can go quite fast. So there's a bunch of different animations you can do. You can even do like what happens when you press a key. Does it change colors? What color does it change to? What color does it start off as? There's quite a bit of kind of customization you can do. Very simple. The construction of this thing is solid. I mean, it's a circuit board sandwiched between, it's either like 2 or 3 pieces of plexi. It's relatively thick plexi, so this thing doesn't flex at all. If I'm really torquing on it, you can hear it kind of just a little bit, and it's all just screwed together and sandwiched together. You can see the circuit board through there. It just seems solid, and I gotta be honest with you, they sent me this for a review. I didn't look to see how much it was, and I started using it, and I was like, this thing's pretty impressive. I like this quite a bit. And then I saw the price of it. I was like, wow, that's a really good price for this. This is really inexpensive compared to a lot of the controllers that I've used that are $200, $300, $400. This thing is way under that. And it just felt like a really good value. This thing is all based on what I believe to be GP240, which I think is like an open source controller technology, like arcade stick technology. So the circuit board is all based off of that open source technology, I believe. And so a lot of the stuff that is going to get updated in the future will probably come to this. That's where the PS4 functionality came from. All right, overall impressions of this. I'm really impressed with it for the price of it. I think that if you're using this, if you plan on using this for PC, for Switch, for Steam Deck, for Mister, for PS3, it's a no-brainer at this price. It's a really good value. I'd recommend it to people who are just curious. Like, maybe I'll like a Hitbox style controller, maybe I won't. This is a really low price point to get into something like this. If you are looking for it for PS4 or PS5, you know, I'd be a little more wary. I had a hard time getting it to work on PS4 and I needed assistance. You might not be able to get that assistance. I can't tell you. And I wasn't able to get it with PS5, get it to work with PS5. So, you know, maybe if I had worked at it a bit more, I could have gotten to work with PS5, but I'm not sure. At some point, you just got to call it a day and make the freaking video, right? So I was never able to get it with a PS5. But I really liked it for everything else. I'm definitely going to keep this thing around for play it on PC, which is where I do the majority of my fighting game stuff, and for playing shmups. I really actually enjoyed playing a shmup with this kind of WASD layout here. And for shmups that don't have turbo fire, where you got to constantly be hitting them, it's nice to have that turbo button on there. You just push it, and then bam, it is now turbo. Unpush it, and bam, it's no longer turbo. It is super nice. I really like that function. I'm really excited about this controller because of the layout with the extra buttons, the price of it, the size of it. I think is really attractive because of how portable it is. I'd highly recommend this with the caveat of do a little research before you buy it for a PS4 or a PS5. Thanks for watching, guys. Hit that like button if you like the video. Hit subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
No escape.